I'm Elara, and I've spent my entire life building something from nothing. I worked two jobs to pay for college. I saved every dime to put a down payment on my first place. And I fought my way up in a man's world to become a successful architect. But, as anyone with a complicated family knows, sometimes the more you build your own life, the more others feel entitled to live in it. For me, that someone was my brother, Liam. This is the story of how my brother tried to claim my house at a family dinner, and what I did next left everyone in total shock. Before I dive into my story, I'd really appreciate it if you could let me know where you're watching from in the comments, and if you'd consider subscribing to my channel. It would mean the world to me and help me keep sharing more stories like this. Thank you so much for being here. I'm Elara, and I've spent my entire life building something from nothing. I worked two jobs to pay for college. I saved every dime to put a down payment on my first place. And I fought my way up in a man's world to become a successful architect. But, as anyone with a complicated family knows, sometimes the more you build your own life, the more others feel entitled to live in it. For me, that someone was my brother, Liam. This is the story of how my brother tried to claim my house at a family dinner, and what I did next left everyone in total shock. At 41, I navigated the intricate world of architecture in Chicago, building my career from the ground up. My days were a blur of blueprints and meetings, often stretching late into the night. My loft apartment, a perfectly curated sanctuary, reflected the order and independence I craved. Yet, this world was often disrupted by my younger brother, Liam, 39, a perpetual seeker of his true calling, always protected by our parents, Richard and Eleanor. The disparity deepened during our college years. I chose a state university, balancing classes with a part-time job to cover expenses. My parents, praising my independence, offered little financial help. 2 years later, Liam enrolled in a prestigious art school in California. His tuition, apartment, and car were fully covered by our parents, so he could explore his artistic soul. Unsurprisingly, Liam dropped out, claiming the program stifled his creativity. While I climbed the corporate ladder, saving every commission, Liam bounced from one failed passion project to another. Our parents were always there, a soft landing for every stumble, a fresh injection of cash. I often wondered if they truly believed his flimsy excuses. When Liam's rent was due, a check appeared. When his car broke down, a new one was delivered. They'd cleared his credit card debt countless times, always with a stern lecture that ended with them pulling out their wallets. Many evenings, Eleanor would call, detailing Liam's latest predicament, inevitably concluding with, Elara, family has to help each other. He really needs us. I'd offer a strained laugh, a silent protest, and change the subject. The burning sense of unfairness had smoldered for decades. By the time I turned 38, I had paid off every student loan and amassed substantial savings, enough to pursue a dream buying my own home. I envisioned a sanctuary. Meanwhile, Liam had just wrapped up a disastrous venture and was living with a new girlfriend. The chasm between our lives had never been starker. I had meticulously built my independence, while he remained trapped in a perpetual cycle of dependence. I never hated Liam. I just grew weary of the relentless double standard. As I approached 40, my career soared. My commissions reflected the value I brought, and my savings swelled. I started house hunting for a classic Chicago townhouse, a place with history, a small garden, and enough space for a rescue dog. Liam, on the other hand, had drifted back to Chicago, degreeless and planless. He tried working at a furniture showroom but quit, claiming the manager was too rigid. Then came a series of short-term gigs, each ending abruptly. Liam instinctively retreated to our parents. Richard dipped into his retirement savings for Liam's exorbitant rent, and Eleanor regularly transferred him money. When the car they'd bought him needed repairs, they not only footed the bill, but also gave him extra cash. Eleanor would often call me afterward, almost seeking validation. recounting Liam's latest crisis and their heroic intervention. But instead of gratitude, I felt the familiar burn of injustice when my own modest car broke down in college. I spent 4 months navigating chaotic public transit to save for repairs. For Liam, a single phone call was all it took. I vividly recall one Friday evening when Eleanor called Elara. I don't know what to do about Liam. He's 2 months behind on his loft rent, and the landlord is threatening eviction. I asked. So, what are you going to do? She sighed. We'll cover it for him, and he promised he'll pay us back next month. I bit back a cynical laugh. Mom, how many times has he made that promise? Has he ever actually paid you back? A long, uncomfortable silence stretched before she changed the subject. I knew refusing to bail Liam out was unthinkable for my parents. As I approached 40, my career soared. My savings finally swelled. I started house hunting for a classic Chicago townhouse. Meanwhile, Liam had spun himself into another cycle. He'd moved in with his girlfriend, Chloe, a responsible young woman, earned a modest income. But Liam continued to spend lavishly. Within a month, Chloe called Eleanor in tears, explaining Liam hadn't contributed to rent and had used her credit card for a trip to Miami. The inevitable breakup sent him spiraling back to our parents. This time, they rented him a chic apartment in a luxury building downtown, arguing it would be easier for him to find a job. I simply shook my head. The irony was sharp while I was meticulously calculating every penny to buy my first home. My brother, who couldn't hold down a job, was living in a place I'd have to think twice about. My parents still called it temporary help. One evening, I joined my parents for dinner. Liam was there, conspicuous in a new designer jacket. Over the meal, he boasted about ordering a custom-made sofa set for his new apartment. Liam? Where did you get the money for that? I asked. He smirked. Mom and Dad loaned it to me. Just a few thousand. I'll pay it back eventually. I looked at Richard and Eleanor, but they avoided my gaze. Driving home that night, a profound weariness settled over me. I had toiled for years to stand firmly on my own 2 feet. But in my parents' eyes, my independence simply meant I was robust enough to bear the weight of someone else's perpetual irresponsibility. Liam, it seemed, would continue to drift aimlessly. After nearly a decade of saving, I finally had enough to purchase the home I had always envisioned. It was a charming, vintage Chicago townhouse in a quiet tree-lined neighborhood. Though not sprawling, its character and small garden made every sacrifice worthwhile. On closing day, I left my office with the keys in my palm, my heart fluttering with childlike wonder. Eleanor hugged me. Richard nodded. You've done well, sweetheart. They attended my housewarming party, bringing an orchid. Neighbors congratulated me, and friends filled the rooms with laughter. I found myself repeatedly running my hand over the new kitchen counter, just to feel the tangible reality of ownership. Liam arrived nearly 3 hours late, clad in a wrinkled t-shirt, a half-empty beer can. He offered only a dismissive, nice place. After awkward small talk, he complained about his latest breakup and his need for a change of scenery. I invited him to dinner, but within minutes, his eyes began to survey the space possessively. This backyard's huge, he announced casually. Lend me the house next weekend for a party. Elara, I'll invite the whole group. I laughed, thinking he was joking, but his eyes were serious. No, Liam, I just moved in. I haven't even finished unpacking. He shrugged. It's just for a few hours. You need to loosen up. Living alone is depressing. I didn't respond, but a cold unease crept in. I knew Liam. Once he fixated on something, he always found a way, usually by manipulating our parents. True to form, that evening, my phone buzzed with Eleanor's name. Elara, I heard Liam wanted to borrow the house for a party, and you said no, it's just a few friends. I remained firm. Mom, this is my house. I just moved in, and I'm not ready for strangers over. There was a telling pause before she spoke, her voice laced with disappointment. You always have so many boundaries. Elara, sometimes. You should be more flexible with family. That single sentence revealed the chasm between us. In my parents' eyes, my success was a communal resource for Liam. Over the next few weeks, I buried myself in making my house a home. Liam, however, remained a persistent shadow. He rarely visited unless to suggest using the house for an event. One Saturday, while mopping, my phone buzzed with a text from Liam. "We'll be over early tonight. Mom says you won't mind." My heart pounded. No one had asked me, yet everyone had decided. I called him immediately, my voice colder than the winter air. "Liam, let me be perfectly clear. This is my house, and I do not agree to anyone coming over without my explicit permission." He scoffed. "You're overreacting. We just want to help you break in the house." I hung up, locked every door, and drew the curtains. No one showed up, but I knew this was far from over. I understood I was fully responsible for my property and happiness, but to Liam and my parents, my assets were a convenient solution for someone else's problems. Protecting this house was about safeguarding it from hands that viewed my boundaries as optional suggestions. Less than a year after moving in, hidden problems surfaced. A minor leak led to discovery of a severely corroded water system, requiring a $7,000 replacement. I had to dip into my emergency fund. Weeks later, Chicago's damp spring brought a worse surprise: a leaking roof, needing a $12,000 replacement. I felt the urge to collapse. If these expenses continued, they would pull me under. As an architect, I knew home prices in my neighborhood had surged over 25%. But selling the home I loved was gut-wrenching. It was tangible proof of my years of persistence. That night, I called my financial advisor. "Sarah," she sighed. "Elara, I know you love this house, but it's becoming a financial burden. You could sell now while the market is at its peak, take the profit, clear your debts, and start fresh somewhere more manageable." Her words, though practical, were hard to accept. The next morning, I noticed sold signs everywhere. Houses were snapped up in days. On my way home, I stopped by a trusted colleague, Mark. He looked over my paperwork and grinned. "Elara, you could list this 20% higher and still receive multiple offers. You could sell within a week." That felt like the final push. I went home, stood in my living room, and knew I had a monumental choice: cling to this dream until it bled me dry, or let it go to safeguard my future. The decision was not impulsive. I spent a week crunching numbers. Every calculation pointed to the same answer: selling was the only logical way to avoid sinking into debt. One crucial detail I kept fiercely secret: I didn't tell my family, especially not Liam or my parents. I knew precisely how they would react. Liam would exploit it, and my parents would insist I keep the house for the family. I needed space and quiet to finalize the deal before the drama exploded. Mark connected me with a young couple. They toured it on a Wednesday, gushing over the kitchen and backyard. One day later, they submitted an offer 7% over asking, with a swift closing date and the option for me to rent back for 30 days. I signed the papers with a mix of relief and heartache. In less than a month, I'd leave the place I had poured so much into. But I was reclaiming my financial security, something I had sacrificed too long. Sunday dinner at my parents' house had been a sacred tradition. That night, I arrived on time, guarding my secret. The moment I stepped inside, I sensed a palpable difference. The dining table was adorned with new linen, silverware gleamed, and chilled champagne sat prominently, unheard of at an ordinary family dinner. Eleanor was smiling wider, and Richard rose to hug me. "You're going to be surprised tonight, Elara." Before I could ask, Liam sauntered in, surprisingly neat, holding a gift bag. Eleanor tilted her head. "Elara, we have wonderful news tonight." Once we were all seated, Richard spoke formally. "The family has discussed it and decided on the perfect solution for everyone." Liam cleared his throat and confidently raised his champagne glass. "Starting next week, I'll be moving in with you, Elara, just temporarily, of course, until I get stable at work again." I slowly set down my fork, gazing at each face. Eleanor added, You have such a spacious house, and it's simply a waste for you to live there alone. Liam can take the spare room. I remained silent, feeling like a mere spectator, when all eyes turned to me. I offered a faint smile. That's a very nice plan. Actually, but there's just one problem. Richard frowned. What problem? I sold the house last week. The table fell into immediate, deafening silence. Liam blinked rapidly, mouth opening but no words escaping. Eleanor set her glass down with a sharp clink, her voice brittle with disbelief. You what sold it? Why didn't you tell the family about this? I calmly retrieved the signed contract and placed it on the table. Here are the papers. The buyers take ownership in 3 weeks. I'll be renting a smaller place downtown. Liam snatched the papers, flipping frantically. You did this just to cut me off, didn't you? No. Liam, I replied. I sold it because the repair and maintenance costs were unsustainable. I'm not going to drown myself in debt. Richard interjected. Elara, this is a monumental decision. Why didn't you consult the family? I let out a short, hollow laugh. Just like all of you planned for Liam to move in with me without ever asking for my opinion. The air thickened. Liam shoved the papers back and stood abruptly. I already told my landlord I'd be out by the end of the month. Where am I supposed to go now? You can rent another place, Liam, I replied. Or find a roommate. Or you could always stay with Mom and Dad. Eleanor hesitated. Liam's old room is my sewing room now, Richard added. And the storage in the garage is full. Clearing it would take time. I allowed myself a small, bitter laugh. So, I'm expected to abandon my planned living arrangements to clean up someone else's mess. Liam snarled. You always think you're better than everyone else. No, Liam, I retorted. I just believe everyone should take responsibility for their own choices. He stormed out, slamming the door. Eleanor sighed, tears glistening. You do this, Elara, and Liam will have nowhere to stay. Mom, I said, he's not homeless. He has plenty of options, I'm just not one of them. Dinner ended abruptly. As I left, Richard said quietly, I'm proud of you for standing your ground, Elara, but this isn't over. Driving home. I knew one thing tonight's shock was merely the prelude. Their plan had collapsed, but they would devise another strategy. This time I was ready. Liam returned the next evening, not to reconcile, but to push again. He stood on my porch. Elara, I need a place to stay, and I think you should do the right thing for the family. I opened the door just enough to block the entrance. The right thing for the family. Liam, doesn't mean sacrificing my own life to accommodate someone who refuses to take care of himself. He smirked. Still the same attitude. You always think you're the only one who works hard. No, I replied evenly. I just know that at 39 you're more than capable of taking responsibility for your own choices. Richard and Eleanor arrived moments later. Eleanor stepped forward, eyes full of reproach. Elara, I don't understand why you're being so hard on him. You know how tough things have been for Liam. Mom, I countered. Things are tough for him precisely because everyone shields him from the consequences. You call that helping, but it's preventing him from growing up. Richard cut in. We're family. When one person has a problem, the whole family shares it. I'm not against helping, I said, but true help means empowering someone to stand on their own 2 feet, not turning someone else's home into a permanent rescue station. Liam scoffed. Listen to you, like you're some family therapist. Truth is, you just don't want to share because you're selfish. Selfish? I raised an eyebrow. When I was 19, I paid for my own tuition and worked 2 jobs. No one offered to share anything with me then, when my car broke down. I rode the bus for 4 months, while you got a brand new car from Mom and Dad after 1 phone call. If selfish means protecting what I've worked my tail off to earn, then yes, Liam, I'm selfish. Silence filled the space. Richard and Eleanor exchanged uneasy glances. Eleanor spoke softly. But you're in a much better place than Liam now. You can afford to help. So why not? Because if I do, I explained, it will happen again. He'll continue to live comfortably with zero motivation to change. And next time, help will inevitably morph into me taking full responsibility. Liam's tone sharpened. So, you want me on the street? No. Liam, I replied. You can crash with a friend, find a roommate, or stay with mom and dad. Richard shook his head. The spare room's still full of stuff, and there's just no time to clear it. Then clear it. I sighed. If you're truly willing to help, that's the most logical way. Liam shot me a furious look, then turned to our parents. See? She just wants to kick me out. I felt anger rising, but kept my voice calm. Liam, no one owes you a place to live, just like I was never owed someone to pull me out of hard times. If you genuinely want to change, you will find a way. If not, you are choosing to stay exactly where you are. Eleanor's eyes welled up. Hearing you say that, Elara, it hurts me deeply. Mom, I responded. It hurts me, too, being put in the position of carrying everyone else's load simply because I take care of myself. Fairness isn't treating everyone exactly the same. It's setting the right expectations and letting them face their own responsibilities. Richard stood up. All right, Elara, I understand your point. But remember, no matter our differences, we are still family. I know, I nodded. And because we're family, I'm telling you the truth. When they left, I stood in the doorway. Liam didn't look back. I knew things wouldn't be peaceful immediately, but at least I had finally voiced what I had kept buried for years. My phone buzzed. A text from Liam. You'll regret this. I stared, exhaled slowly, and set the phone down. Inside, I felt profound relief. The burden lifted. Just 2 days after the argument, Eleanor called. Liam had moved back in with our parents. I braced myself, but things didn't unfold as expected. Eleanor told me that the very night Liam came home, Richard had placed a formal house agreement on the dinner table. Liam was required to pay $500 a month towards household expenses, purchase his own personal items, and handle lawn mowing and trash weekly. A curfew was firmly set. Eleanor assured me they were serious. Richard kept the garage keys, and Eleanor even started locking the snack cabinet after 10 p.m. I laughed, feeling a flicker of hope. The first week, Liam reacted as predicted. He grumbled that $500 was ridiculous, and the curfew felt like living in a dorm. But Richard was unyielding. If you want cheaper, Liam, then rent somewhere else. Here, there are rules. Eleanor didn't rush to Liam's defense. She simply stated, Liam, your father and I have been far too lenient. If you want to live here, you have to contribute. I stayed out of it, receiving updates during brief calls. At first, Liam defiantly skipped mowing, and the cost was deducted from his payment. One night, he came home past curfew. Richard had locked the door, and Liam found himself sleeping on the living room couch. Gradually, Liam began to adjust. He took a part-time job at an auto repair shop. Not glamorous, but enough to cover his rent and some personal expenses. Eleanor mentioned it was the first time she'd seen him do his own laundry. 3 months later, Richard called. Elara, guess what? Liam just had an interview at a major delivery company for a warehouse position. It's not his dream job, but it's steady, and it comes with health insurance. That's wonderful, Dad, I replied, genuinely surprised. I truly hope he sticks with it. Richard chuckled. I hope so too. Your mom and I have been setting aside his rent money. If he's serious, we can help him with a deposit on his own place, but we haven't told him yet. That news left me both deeply relieved and amazed. It was the first time my parents were supporting Liam while holding him accountable. 2 months after that, Liam called me. His tone was remarkably calmer, devoid of the usual blame or sarcasm. Elara, I just got hired full-time at the company. It's not a high-flying position, but I feel like I'm finally starting to do something for myself. Something real. Congratulations, Liam, I told him sincerely. That's a really important step. He hesitated, then added, I know I've made things incredibly hard for you. I'm not promising to change overnight, but I get why you wouldn't let me move in that day. If you had, I'd probably still be the exact same person. I stayed silent, truly feeling the honesty in his words. It was movement I had once believed would never happen. One evening, Eleanor sent me a picture of Liam painting Richard and Eleanor's backyard fence. She wrote, "My son's finally learning some manual work." I laughed, remembering how he used to invent excuses to avoid physical labor. I knew the process wouldn't be perfect. Liam would still have his lazy moments, but at least now he had experienced a true taste of responsibility. And more importantly, this time, they were learning to set boundaries instead of rushing to fix everything for him. I didn't say it out loud, but deep down, I felt lighter. I wasn't the only one in the family standing by the principle that everyone is responsible for their own choices. And maybe, just maybe, this could be the start of lasting change. Not just for Liam, but for Richard and Eleanor, too. 3 months after moving out of my old townhouse, I signed the papers for a 2-bedroom condo in downtown Chicago. It was smaller than my previous home, but absolutely perfect for me. No leaky roofs or rotting pipes to worry about. Everything was new. The substantial profit from selling my last house covered a significant chunk of this one, making my mortgage lighter for the first time in years. I could open my monthly budget statement without anxiety. I'd even managed to build an emergency fund. The profound sense of financial security was an immense relief. On moving day, Richard and Eleanor came to help, bringing lunch and old decorative pieces. There were no hints about Liam needing a place to stay, just genuine focus on setting up furniture. Eleanor even said, "You picked this place well. Elara, it's manageable, easy to care for." I smiled, feeling the distinct shift in her tone. Liam stopped by that afternoon, carrying a gift basket of coffee and homemade cookies. He glanced around my new condo. "This suits you," he said. "Small, but tidy and warm." "Yeah," I replied. I wanted something easy to manage. No more spending every weekend fixing something. We didn't revisit old fights, but the silence wasn't tense anymore. Liam mentioned he'd saved up from his delivery job and was looking for a 1-bedroom near work. "I want to sign the lease myself," he added. "No parents co-signing." I was surprised, but just nodded. "That's good. Liam, doing it yourself will feel different." Over the next few weeks, the dynamics within our family slowly leveled out. Richard and Eleanor no longer called me about every small problem Liam. Instead, they shared stories of him proactively solving things. Eleanor even admitted in a private conversation, "You were right, Elara. I thought protecting him was love, but in reality, I was just keeping him stuck." I simply said, "What matters is we're all doing better now." With my newfound financial freedom, I spent more time on friends and hobbies. I enrolled in Italian cooking classes. On weekends, I biked along the lakefront. The need to constantly side hustle had vanished. I even started researching short trips. One Friday night, Liam called. His voice was bright. "Elara, I just signed the lease on my new apartment moving in next month." "Congratulations, Liam," I said, genuinely happy. "You've done something I honestly thought would take a very long time." Liam chuckled. "If you'd let me move in with you that day, I'd still be stuck. I hated you for it then, but thanks." That short call, filled with unexpected honesty, made me realize that holding firm boundaries doesn't just protect you. Sometimes, it can be the precise push someone else needs to truly change. At Liam's small housewarming, I brought a small cactus and a gift card for home goods. He laughed. "Thanks, Elara. Don't worry, I won't sell it." The entire room chuckled.